What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria, here on my YouTube channel. My name is Court. I will be your host for the duration. With me always is Chris.
How's it going, everyone?
Andris is not here this week. It's his bye week. He should be back next week, hopefully. If you noticed, we did take a couple weeks off just due to circumstances. And well, one of those weeks, I think there was like literally just nothing to talk about. And I don't think anyone wants to hear us blathering on about the weather. So we did take that off, but we're back today. We have three topics that we're going to talk about today. The big one is we are going to be doing a full spoilers review of the brand new DC movie, The Suicide Squad, from writer-director James Gunn. Of course, I do have a non-spoilery review on my channel if you want to check that out. That is there for you as well. We are going to talk about The Suicide Squad's box office and how it's not as awesome as, well, anyone had hoped. And then finally, Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park fame just signed a new deal, and it's really, really, really big. So we're going to talk about that. It's pretty crazy. I do want to remind you that if you don't always have the time to watch a 90-minute video on YouTube, we do have our podcast on places like Spotify and, of course, Google Podcasts. So you can always go download it there. We would appreciate that. And, of course, we want to encourage you to give the video a like if you do enjoy it, because it helps the video get to more people, helps the channel grow. We appreciate that very much. And, of course, drop your thoughts in the comments about any of these topics. I do read all of the comments, and I respond to them as often as I can. So don't think your thoughts are going unread. So we want to say thank you guys for that. And so, yeah, we are going to launch into our first topic of the day, which is our fully spoiler review of The Suicide Squad. Before we get into specifics, Chris, let me ask you this first. I think I know the answer, but what did you think about the original David Ayer Suicide Squad?
I really, really didn't like that movie. And I think the biggest takeaway that I had from it after watching it was the editing is absolutely god awful. Like, I really truly believe it's one of the worst edited, big budgeted movies that I've seen in a long time. And I do want to emphasize big budgeted movies. I watch, some indies and stuff, and you could tell when there's like kind of incompetent first time filmmakers. There was no excuse that this $200 million movie was this shoddy. Even at the time, before I really knew, before the Ayer cut was kind of a term, I think we all kind of heard reports, and we could kind of tell that like Warner Brothers really just took that movie and they were like, shit, Batman v Superman underperformed and got like savaged by critics. We got to make this more like Guardians of the Galaxy. You have to make it more like Deadpool. And at the end result is just this butchered, really bad movie. So I was not a fan of it.
Well, and we should say, I'm pretty sure you know this, but for anyone watching, so the story goes, Ayer made his cut, and then Warner Brothers was trying to decide what they wanted to do. And the sort of second trailer that came out for the movie had Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. And to this day, I say it's a masterpiece of a trailer. I think it was an absolute work of art. But the company that made that trailer, it was a company called Trailer Park, which is awesome. Basically, Warner Brothers had that trailer company do a cut of the movie, which was hyper frenetic and music video and whatever. And then they showed both cuts to like test audiences and took all the feedback and just kind of jammed it all together. Yeah. And I agree with you. Now, I will say, I like Suicide Squad. I don't think it's a good movie. I don't. Mm-hmm. I was entertained by it. I had fun with it, but particularly the editing, I 100% agree with you. Mm-hmm. Another interesting thing was that when the movie came out, now this kind of goes along with, I guess it's just part of Warner Brothers PR spin. For a long, long time, Ben Affleck was saying, I'm still Batman, when he was not. It had already been decided he was not going to be Batman anymore. Of course, now he's potentially coming back for the Flash, but that's a different point. In this case, David Ayer said, no, this is my cut of the movie. This is my cut. This isn't blah, blah, blah. Well, we know that wasn't true because Ayer got on Twitter about a week ago or so and said, yeah, they basically, the movie that came out is nothing like my movie. My movie was dark. It was serious. He was a little bit up his own ass in saying my cut was amazing, but whatever.
All of that masterpiece.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it. No notes.
Flawless victory.
Exactly.
So with that in context, as we know, James Gunn was working for Marvel. He was doing the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Then he was fired because some years old tweets of his where he said some pretty nasty shit uh, came to light. Disney fired him, despite the fact that he himself had already apologized for those tweets years ago without being called out. He just said, like, I've grown as a person. I don't want to be that guy anymore.
Yeah.
At the time, he was a provocateur. We've talked about on the show before. He worked for Troma for a while, which, if you don't know, is a studio who does, you know, very provocative, kind of schlocky movies. He had apologized. Disney still fired him. Years later, they rehired him, or maybe a year later or so.
Yeah, it was like about a year later. So it
Yeah.
was just really this stupid kind of performative act of
Yeah.
that. It was dumb. I mean, everyone's talked about this to death. I think that most rational people I think are like, one, he was just saying some dumb edgelord humor,
Yeah.
back in the time when it wasn't even that edgy at that time.
Yeah.
Like, it was just kind of everything he said was dumb, but at the same time, I don't think anything that he said was worse than what you would hear at any stand-up like comedy club that
Right.
you would go to. Maybe not something that was like geared for Comedy Central, but if you went to an actual like comedy club, you would hear shit like that all the time. And
Yeah.
we grow and change as people, and we grow and change as a society. And like you said, he already fucking commented on it. Like, before anybody called him out, he was just like, this is stupid. But yeah, so in the interim, like you were saying, like before the 1 year gap, I suppose, that Disney fired and then rehired him, every studio was just like, come to us. I think that the were the Hollywood really seemed to take notice of what he was able to do with the Guardians of the Galaxy films. I think that he, breathed such a new life into these characters that pretty much nobody knew about. I mean, there's very, very niche, even within comic fans circles. And he just made it a massive hit. And it was extremely influential on a lot of other Marvel movies, but not other movies in general. Again, I think that one of the kind of templates for Suicide Squad 2016, when it got the recut, was to try and make it kind of more like Guardians to an extent, where it had like these constant, incessant needle drops and everything. So to me, it kind of made perfect sense when the news came out that it's like, okay, Warner Brothers swooped up James Gunn since he's been fired, and what he's going to do is the Suicide Squad. Now, I know, like, did that catch you off guard? Because for me, hearing that, I was like, oh, that makes total sense. Like, this was before, just when it was announced, and I was like, James Gunn is going to be doing the Suicide Squad. I'm like, yeah, I can see it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, as you said, all of these studios were clamoring to get this guy. They were just trying to seduce him so hard. And Warner Brothers basically said, any IP you want, we'll give it to you. Like, maybe they didn't say Batman because Matt Reeves was already working on Batman, but I think everything, Superman, whatever you want, it's yours. And he said, I want Suicide Squad. And like you said, as soon as I heard that, I was like, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a maybe more twisted version of Guardians of the Galaxy. It's this ragtag team of characters that even comics fans, a lot of them don't know. I mean, in this movie, some of the characters I knew of. King Shark, I knew of Polka Dot Man. TDK, no idea who that was. No. Ratcatcher 2, never heard of her. So it made sense. So let me ask you, what were your thoughts going into the movie? Were you looking forward to it? Were you sort of worried about it, or?
No, I was very much looking forward to this. Ever since I heard that he was attached, I had a really good feeling of it, and everything that was coming out press wise for over a year now has been really promising. Like, everything from just the description that he's kind of trying to make it like a 70s war film in a way. It's very much Dirty Dozen meets Trauma. So, and then all the trailers that were coming out, I tried not to watch them a lot because, like, I wanted to still stay fresh. But from what I've seen, like the Red Band trailer and the second trailer, it's like, yeah, this seems like it has the energy that I'm looking for, the kind of goofy humor. It seems very much like a James Gunn film, just without any of the limitations of having it to be PG-13 or safe for Disney, or having to fit into a larger universe. And so all this movie had to do is just kind of deliver, I think, on the promise of the trailers for me. And it did that in spades. I really love this movie. I think it's a fantastic summer blockbuster. It's yeah, I mean, we'll go into it in great depth, but yeah, I had a blast with this. I think that it was a tremendous amount of fun. It was funny, like very stylishly directed by James Gunn, and packed a lot of heart. And yeah, so I was very happy with it, and I'm probably going to check it out again very soon.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty much there with you. I had a blast with this movie. It's definitely more competently made than the 16 cut. And again, that's not me throwing shade at Ayer specifically.
No.
Just with everything that went on behind the scenes. But yeah, this movie was a lot of fun. It was quite funny. It was really bloody, which I appreciated very much.
Yeah.
I did have a couple issues with it, which we'll get to. But I guess before we sort of talk about the plot, do you want to go through like the cast a little bit, give some thoughts on who you liked or who stood out to you or anything like that?
Sure. Would this be spoilers? Because I think that even with how do I say it? I think just talking about the cast could be spoilery. So
Yeah, we're going full
okay.
spoilers here on out. So
okay, cool. So yeah, I mean the cast is great. I mean everyone is just bringing it. Since the reason why I mentioned like which cast we can or can't talk about is essentially in the beginning there's a false start with a bunch of expendable people. All of them die except for what's his name? For Rick Flag, played by whatever the fuck his name is. I can't
Joel
think of it right
Kinnaman.
now. Yeah, Joel Kinnaman and Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie. Both of them are great. Margot's been killing it. She was one of the few bright spots for me from the 2016 Suicide Squad. I also really enjoyed her sort of solo movie, Birds of Prey. I liked it seemingly more than a lot of people. I thought that was a lot of fun. And
Yeah,
she's just as good as ever here. Other standouts for me are Idris Elba as Bloodsport. He's kind of the macho, kind of like gruff military guy. But he does kind of have like a heart of gold kind of deep down. Maybe not a heart of gold, but he's
got a soft side for sure.
Yeah, he's better than he kind of lets on, especially from the beginning, where he wants to let it be known to everybody, including his daughter. He's a bad dude. But yeah, other standouts. IMDb does this weird thing. I don't know how they how do I say it? I don't understand the way that they put casts in order. So there's like a shit ton of cast members, and I'm trying to like search for the ones that I'm trying to talk about, and I can't find them.
Which character are you looking for?
The woman that played Ratcatcher 2.
Daniela Melchior.
Yeah, Daniela Melchior. Never seen her in anything before.
Me neither.
I thought the character was terrific. She was so charming and affable. She was the only one there that was seemingly actually good. Like everyone else has been they talk about like they killed women and children or whatever, Bloodsport and Peacemaker. But all she did was just try to rob a bank. That's what she said, at least. And yeah, she's very sweet, and she has some of the best emotional moments of it. And I thought she was great in it.
I thought the performance was really strong, and I kind of felt like that character was the heart of the story.
Oh.
Or at least the sort of emotional core of the film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and
and a little bit with Polka Dot Man, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, it's everything kind of like she was the best character, or like she was the nicest character. Not, you know what I mean by best is not like the best. You know what I'm trying to say?
Like she was the best person of them.
She was the least evil. Like I said, all it seems is that she robbed a bank. Everyone else was truly a fucking crazy person and evil. And because of that, she kind of brought in everybody within her orbit. Like she kind of helped make King Shark less of like this, like, eating machine. She even has like this touching moment with Idris Elba and talking about like her backstory and bringing out his backstory of why he doesn't like rats and such. So yeah, I agree. She was the heart of it, and everyone kind of within her orbit also was able to kind of share more of their humanity just by kind of interacting with her.
Right. Mm-hmm. I loved her relationship with King Shark as well.
Oh yeah, and King Shark's terrific. I see a lot of people giving like Sylvester Stallone credit. I don't I gotta be honest. It's fine. He did clearly one day of voice work. So it's really the animation team, whoever did the mocap, because I don't think it was Sylvester Stallone. Whoever
It
did the
was
mocap.
actor by the name of Stephen Agee.
Okay.
I only know that because I heard him on a podcast.
Well, there you go. But no, I love that character, and I'm not trying to throw shade at Sylvester Stallone, but it's just like, yeah, I love that character. He could easily be ridiculous if they try to take it too seriously, because it's just like this big walking, talking shark. But it definitely walked the balance well of like kind of adorable, cuddly animal sidekick, while also just like a really strong, terrifying, will literally rip you in half and eat you kind of monster. So I liked him a lot. Thoughts on King Shark and or Sylvester Stallone?
I kind of agree. I mean, like I thought Sylvester Stallone was good, but he didn't have a lot to do. It totally worked for me.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be saying Oscar talk, but
Yeah, it's similar to Groot in the sense that Groot's a great character. Love Groot. But it'd be weird if you were like, oh, Vin Diesel crushed it. He just crushed it as Groot. I'm like, okay.
Right. I will say also that even though she doesn't have a lot of screen time, I liked her in the first movie, but Viola Davis as Amanda Waller is given so much more to do in this one. Like she has in the first movie, she's mostly just stoic the whole time, but here she like loses her shit a couple times. It's like screaming and it's like intimidating. Viola Davis is amazing. So that was really good.
For sure. Yeah, I loved it. There's one scene towards the end before she gets like clonked on the head with a golf club, where she's just losing it and she's just screaming and there's like spit coming. And I'm like, Viola Davis is going for it. Like I said, she isn't given much to do, but I love that she really sunk her teeth in and kind of knew exactly, like, you can go a little big with it, and big she went.
Yes. Yeah. I also I'm a fan of David Dastmalchian.
Oh yeah, me too.
He's also, there's one thing I find attractive. When I say attractive, I don't mean like sexy, but just something that just really does it for me in a person is like enthusiasm. And I've seen or listened to him on a couple of podcasts, and he's just like the most enthusiastic dude. He's a huge comic book fan going all the way back to when he was a little kid. And of course, his first movie ever was The Dark Knight. He was on Fat Man on Batman, the Kevin Smith show.
Yeah.
Told that whole story of how he got the job. And it's fascinating to listen to. And he just like, the guy just like lights up talking about this stuff. And of course, then he was in the Ant-Man movies, and now he's in the DCEU. He also made a movie a couple years ago with Karen Gillan. I think I've mentioned it before on the show, called All Creatures Here Below. That I really liked, and he was really, really good. And
all right.
Just a really cool little character actor who just seems like a lovely guy. I really liked him in this movie. It's a very like kind of subtle, mellow performance, but I really liked the way the character was written. They do, since we're going spoilers, the whole sort of ethos of his character is that like when he was a child, his mother experimented on him and his brothers and sisters to try and turn them into superheroes, and it kind of destroyed his life and whatever. And now he sees his mother everywhere whenever there's some kind of issue, argument, whatever. He's always seeing his mother as like the villain of the situation, which they play off towards the end of the film. I thought that was hilarious, but there was like, I said ethos earlier, I meant pathos. There's pathos there. So he was another standout to me. I'm with you. I really liked Ratcatcher 2 when she's telling Bloodsport the story of her father, played by Taika Waititi, who I think has like maybe one line in the movie. It's all flashbacks, but still, that he was addicted to heroin and he had an overdose and blah, blah, blah. Like that was that quiet, emotional scene that 2016 Suicide Squad never got to that place. There were moments of like emotion, but it never got there. So I thought that was really great. I guess let's get into the sort of story here. So you were saying it starts out with this sort of almost fake out mission. So we have Michael Rooker as forget his name.
Savant.
Yeah. Michael Rooker's there. You have Flula Borg as Javelin, Pete Davidson as Blackguard, Weasel, as played on set by James Gunn's brother,
Sean Gunn.
Sean Gunn. That's right.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know why I thought this, but as soon as I saw that Pete Davidson, I like Pete Davidson, but as soon as I saw that he was in this movie, I'm like, I bet he's the first to die. And I think he was, or if he wasn't the first, he was in that first scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And man, was it brutal. Just face like taken off.
Blown off. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a hell of a way to start the movie. It's a little forecasted if you've seen the trailers, because I think you can kind of piece together like, well, I've seen, let's say, Pete Davidson only in this type of setting. I haven't seen him in any other scenes in the trailers. Right. He didn't seem to be in the third act. So I can imagine he's going. I can imagine TDK is going. But it was still fantastic to see. And it was a great way of just, it really kind of delivered on the premise that is the Suicide Squad, even from the comics, which it really is like this ever kind of rotating roster of expendable characters that they're like these D-list characters that they throw to it's just bodies, it's just, they're just throwing bodies and like, oh, that guy's dead, bring in another guy. So it was great to show like, yeah, this is it, the dialogue leading up to it too, the way they were talking, it's clear like Amanda Waller's been putting on a ton of these missions. Like this isn't just this isn't super uncommon. Like they do this seemingly often enough, and Rick Flag's been on other missions and stuff with these people. And just to see them get obliterated, within the first 5-10 minutes was hilarious. And it's that type of kind of nasty trauma-like humor that is so authentically James Gunn,
Yeah.
I think you mentioned in the beginning that like that's kind of how we got his start for Trauma, which is just one of the bottom of the barrel kind of low budget nasty studio companies, like very small company from the 80s and 90s, and he brought it over here to 2021 and with a massive budget.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so seeing everyone just say the creative ways that they were dying, a particular favorite of mine was Nathan Fillion dying, because he detaches his arms, as his name indicates. His TDK stands for the detachable kid, and his arms kind of float over and they're just kind of like awkwardly slapping the people. But there's just a brilliant shot of these bad guys shooting at his arms, and then like 20 feet away you just see Nathan Fillion writhing around on the ground just screaming. And it's that level of like gory, absurd humor that you find throughout this, and it just tickled me.
Well, and also we have right in the very beginning, they're going to this island called Corto Maltese, which I guess is from the comics, because I know it's referenced in Batman 89. Mm-hmm. It's a fictional country, but South American island nation, I think.
Yeah.
But so it's like an airdrop, and they jump into the ocean and then climb up onto the beach. So we have Weasel, who is a literal weasel, somewhat anthropomorphized, but what have you. Mm-hmm. He goes into the water, and then it's just like, oh shit, does Weasel know how to swim? And then he just drowns. We find out in the mid-credit scene that he did survive, but that like, I got a big laugh out of that, and it reminded me very much of Deadpool 2, everything with X-Force when they're doing the parachuting and everyone just gets obliterated. So I thought that was a nice touch.
For sure.
Eventually, we realize that I guess Rick Flag gets captured, or so we think, because he survives that initial wave.
And then Harley Quinn gets captured, and then we kind of like just kind of not pan, but like they show another side of the island that they sent in a B team. So essentially the ones that they sent were just distracting these guards. And on the B team, we had Idris Elba's Bloodsport, John Cena as Peacemaker, who we didn't talk about yet, but he's pretty great in this. Yes. As he self-described by John Cena as a douchebag Captain America, which is very accurate. Mm-hmm. It's almost akin to what's his name? The guy from the show The Boys, Homelander, where it's like, it's kind of like it's very much a critique on kind of like this America and kind of this like the way that America is often kind of like taken it upon themselves to be the world police of like, we'll give ourselves jurisdiction to go do this, whatever is necessary for justice.
And way to tie it into the Trey Parker, Matt Stone conversation too.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, there we go. So we'll get back to that. And yeah, he's funny in this. And who else was there? Oh, Ratcatcher, which we talked about, and Polka Dot Man. and King Shark, and they're kind of the B team, and they go off, and since they have a clear like path, and the guards are being distracted, they're essentially sent to take care of ostensibly what is the kind of the MacGuffin for most of the movie, which is essentially going to what is it? Going to this facility called Jotunheim that's being kind of in controlled by the local dictator at the moment. And there's a project called Project Starfish. And at the beginning of the movie, they don't really know what that is. Like, okay, what's Project Starfish? What's this about? I don't know. Go to Jotunheim. You got to stop it. So that's really just the main thrust that we kind of see them, and then wackiness ensues.
Mhm.
Sorry, hold on. My computer's being lame. So you keep talking while I just try to charge it.
Okay. So we believe basically the B team are going to go and try to. So Harley's been captured by the dictator's men. We believe, or it's set up that. Yeah, let me do this too. This is annoying me. It's set up that that Rick Flag has been captured by the soldiers as well. So the B team are going to go in, kill all the soldiers, get Rick Flag out. So they go in quietly. They're taking out all these soldiers, blah, blah, blah. And then they find Rick Flag. This is when we get that wicked reveal that these are actually freedom fighters that like saved Rick Flag. And now they've killed all these people, which was great. And that action scene was like, again, really, really violent as is most of the movie. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was great, and it showed kind of this dynamic, essentially between Bloodsport and Peacemaker, setting up this rivalry as they're both kind of like trying to be the macho men in charge, and they're trying to be like they're trying to be the ultimate badass, and they're trying to one up each other. So they're doing kind of like you mentioned it in your I think you mentioned it in your review that it's kind of like a Legolas and Gimli sort of like relationship, in the sense that they're trying to was that you or no?
That was not me. You're cheating on me with other reviewers.
Well, I just assumed because it was a Lord of the Rings reference, so I thought that would be right up your alley. Anyway, but it was kind of like that
we talked about that for Loki.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
Yeah,
but yeah, this is it's like a Legolas and Gimli situation, in the sense that they're like, okay, I killed one. Oh, well, I killed one. Look, I killed one like this. I killed one like this, and so that's it leads to a lot of funny kind of visual gags of like someone got electrocuted, another guy blew up, they seemingly nearly shot this guy's dick off, just graphic nudity for no reason other than it's a dick, which feels very much in line with James Gunn's humor.
Right.
Yeah, there it's that level of violence is kind of sustained almost throughout, and it's like I said, it's just like entertaining.
So meanwhile, and this is one part of the movie that didn't work for me all that well. And I might say that Margot Robbie is better as Harley in this movie than she ever has been before. I'm not certain of that. I want to see this movie again before I write that on my tombstone, but I don't think that's a phrase that people say. But she's really good in this movie. I think her character is written really well. I think her story suffers a little bit. So for me, she's been captured by the dictator's men. They doll her all up in this beautiful red gown. And they take her to see the dictator, and basically he wants to marry her because it would look good to his people, so he can further be dictating. And then in true Harley fashion, she like falls in love with him immediately because he's hot. They have a sex scene, which was funny. I enjoyed that. But like, and then she ends up killing him. And she does have her escape scene is badass. Like, she's doing a lot of wicked violence. And there's another moment I want to get to in a second, but I felt her whole subplot sort of in the middle of the movie was kind of superfluous, like in that it didn't really affect the plot of the film overall much. I mean, yeah, she killed the dictator and whatever, but I feel like you could have cut that all out and the movie wouldn't have changed very much at all. I don't know if that was Warner Brothers saying you have to put Harley into this movie, figure something out, or if maybe it's just, I don't know, that didn't work for me. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, because I've heard other people talk about it, and I can agree in the sense that it does kind of like, it doesn't really add much to what the main story is, where it, doesn't really progress the plot. It's just kind of like her own little subplot. But at the same time, I quite liked it. Like, I was never bored in those scenes. Um I was entertained. I liked kind of seeing that, especially because I think I think that it's like, it's either this movie or Birds of Prey that has the best kind of Harley Quinn performance by Margot Robbie for me. Um, but I will say that I think this movie did something better in one scene than she has in any of the other movies she's been in, which is just show how legitimately crazy Harley Quinn is. Like, she kind of sleeps with the dictator guy, I forget what his name is, and he keeps talking, he keeps monologuing about like, I'm gonna kill the women and children, and she just shoots him. Now, that's not the craziest part, but then she just goes into this monologue about why she shot him, and about like, well, I thought, like, if I saw any red flags, and I would take care. And the more she's talking, the more like, this woman is unhinged.
Yeah.
And he's just dying in this pool of blood. And she's like, see, you look so much prettier now. And that I loved, because I'm like, yes, she's not just like kooky, you know what I mean? Like in the first Suicide Squad, that's not exactly all that Harley Quinn is. She's actually crazy.
Yeah.
And I like that they emphasized that. And like you said, like her kind of escape was a really terrific action scene. Using the javelin given by Javelin, by the great Flula Borg, who was the only one from that original team that died on the beach, that I was sad about, because I love Flula Borg. I know that I saw from your Facebook that you didn't really know who he was going into this. He's hilarious to me. I love that guy. And
He was
I
on the latest episode of Conan O'Brien's podcast, and he was making me laugh harder than Conan was. Like, he was
yeah,
killing me.
the dude is hilarious. And so he was one of the only ones where I was like, oh, I wish they had more of him. But he gave Harley Quinn the javelin, and she uses it to great extent. And I love that sequence of her killing all of the guards, and they're like, their blood is replaced with like beautiful flowers, and
Yeah.
there's like animated birds. So that's where I'm at. It's at a weird kind of middle ground of like, you know, this doesn't really add anything to the overall story, but at the same time, I'm enjoying so much of this weird little side trip that it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was. I mean, I'll,
Yeah.
I'll watch Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn sewing a bed sheet, like, she's just so good.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, it didn't affect the story overall, but I
No.
had fun watching it. And it's interesting to note. So there's a scene where she's being tortured. So she's like basically hanging from handcuffs with her feet like sort of just off the floor.
Mhm.
And then they leave her alone for some reason, because that's what happens in movies.
Yeah.
And she breaks the one guy's neck with her legs, and then uses her feet, uses her toes to get the keys and flip up and like undo the handcuffs with her toes. She did that for real.
In a sequence directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
It felt like it, because it was just like close up of her feet for a few minutes. But yeah, that I love that.
Yeah, she actually did that. There was no camera trickery there. I saw them on, I don't know, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel or something. And James Gunn was saying, yeah, we're gonna have a stunt person do it. And she's like, no, I'm pretty sure I can do it. Although
That's
she
awesome.
used the word reckon because she's Australian. But
Right.
she said she's always been very dexterous with her toes. And then she also made a Tarantino joke.
I love it.
Yeah, because she was in
Once
Hollywood.
Well, yeah, but Hollywood.
I almost said Mexico. But yeah, her escape scene was great. And I did love, because now the B team are mounting an expedition to come break her out. And just as they're launching the expedition, she like comes around the corner and she's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, and that's played wonderfully by both her and Kinnaman. Just his expression of just like, what we were gonna get. It was a good plan. I really like that. And she's like, I could get back in there if you want. Yeah, no. So that's like I think we both said, it's like, I don't know if I felt like those scenes really dragged the story, I would have disliked them. But I got to be honest, at little over 2 hours, I really didn't even feel the length. Like, I could kind of feel the third act stretching a bit, but by the end of it, I didn't feel like, oh, that was too long. Like, I was into it really throughout. I did not mind the length at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I felt it was like a hair too long, but
Mhm.
like you said, I was having so much fun that I almost felt that more retroactively when the movie ended. Like I was just kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah, that one sequence kind of went on a little bit, but
Yeah.
in the moment, I was kind of along for the ride. And
For sure. Yeah. There was never a moment where I was like, oh, this scene is dragging, move it along. Like each scene worked. It was
yeah.
real. Like I was really into it.
So where do we go from there? I guess
Um,
that's
yeah, essentially, the again what we were talking about, like with the Jotunheim and stuff. It turns out that Project Starfish is an operation spearheaded by the kind of government there in Coast Corta Maltese.
yeah.
Um, and the kind of evil genius behind it is Thinker, played by the great Peter Capaldi, who isn't given too much to do, but he gets a little he gets shades of his character Tucker Carlson from the movie In the Loop. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't. The character's name is Tucker Carlson.
No, fuck, it's not Tucker. It's something else. No, literally, that was literally a Freudian slip because he plays a douchebag politician in it.
Okay,
So I was just thinking, no, his name's not Tucker Carlson. I'll look up what his name is in it.
that's
But
funny.
it's essentially that was not a joke. Honestly, that was just like that was just a slip of the tongue. But he plays this guy named Malcolm Tucker. So that's why.
Okay, there it is.
Okay. So he plays Malcolm Tucker. And the reason why I say that is if it's a hilarious movie, and there's like a show that's kind of that it was spun off of, where he plays kind of this politician who just constantly curses and shouts in this thick Scottish accent, you fucking idiot. And so he doesn't give it much to do, but he does get a little moment at the end when he's just like, you Yankee fucking dandies. I don't know. He's just yelling at Idris Elba, and I loved it. And yeah, and that's, like I said, that's really the main plot, is that this alien creature, which is kind of like a big starfish that was found by Americans, kind of like spawns out little babies, very H.G. Geiger from Alien, covers your face, and it makes the big starfish grow, but like it essentially takes over the sentience in the body and the mind of whatever face the little starfish controls. And as Americans are wont to do, if they find something like this, they want to try and weaponize it in secret. So that's the big kind of plot. That's what the MacGuffin leads to, is that there's a big old giant fucking starfish named Starro, and he gets loose, and the Suicide Squad has to stop him.
And one thing I want to point out, because that's kind of that's the final act, that's the climax, is this battle with Starro. But one thing that I thought was really cool is this movie is essentially broken into chapters.
Yes.
So you get these titles on the screen, like Meanwhile Harley or whatever. But the way they visualize the titles, I thought was really cool, because it's always like something to do with the environment. So it'll be like burning trees making the words, or smoke, or water, or groups of rats, or
Yeah.
rubble from a busted up skyline. I thought that was really neat.
Oh, I love that too, because it's so inventive, and some of it you could tell was like CGI added. Some of it looked like it was actual props. Like there was like when there was like a panning down of Harley kind of in this like hole, and it looked like actual like twigs that were made. It didn't look CGI, or there was like letters spelled out in mud. And I'm like, it's really creative, because it's like it's clearly not just something that they thought would be fun in post production. It was clear from the get-go this was part of his vision. And that's something, to kind of break away just from like kind of going over the story beats. Something that I really loved about this movie was, again, James Gunn's direction. This is so stylish, and I think it's probably his best directed film. Maybe not the best movie he's made, but it's his best directed movie. And there's so many just unique touches, like even from the opening shot of just kind of like this reflection of Michael Rooker's character in this puddle, and then it kind of flips around and upside down reveals that it was a reflection, to a really uh, mesmerizing shot of essentially John Cena's character Peacemaker's helmet on the ground, which is reflective. And it was kind of like dollying around the shot while you see the reflection of him and Joel Kinnaman fighting in it. Just little stuff like that in like the chapter sequences that you were talking about. It just, there's so much style. That's the best way to describe it. It's very stylized. It's very it unlike the previous Suicide Squad or a lot of other kind of big budget studio movies, this one really didn't feel like it was made by committee. It didn't
Right.
feel like it had a bunch of like too many chefs in the kitchen. It really felt like this is James Gunn through and through.
It felt like an auteur movie for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, so yeah, the direction I thought was like kind of the best part. Just how he brought all of this together and just kind of this wacky bow that's so violent and vulgar and infantile in times, but it's so charming and heartwarming. And yeah, it's a great time.
Now, this is actually where I'll bring up my biggest problem with the movie, and I mentioned this to you a couple days ago.
Hmm.
Um, I took a lot of issue with the way this movie was shot.
Hmm.
Um, there were instances where I thought it worked really, really well,
Hmm.
but I remember in one of the early trailers for this movie, we see the scene where the squad is on like the bus or whatever, the truck. They're getting ready to try and go save Harley, and they're all saying, it's mostly an argument, I think, between Peacemaker and Bloodsport, but they're trying to figure out the plan. And the camera keeps doing these like I think they're called
It's like a whip pan.
a whip pan, yeah.
Mhm.
So like, and it's I guess the idea is it's supposed to be like it's our POV, like we're on the bus as part of the crew and we're like going back and forth, but it just kept like, doing like this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I liked it in the trailer. I felt it was really overused in the movie because it's happening all the time. And part of it is because I started finding it distracting. Another part of it is maybe maybe I have a weak stomach, but like overuse of stuff like that does tend to make me feel a little bit queasy.
Mhm.
So I was getting that, which is never what you want when you're watching a movie. Um, you didn't tell me what you thought of that. I got the impression that you thought it was cool, but what did you think about it?
Yeah, not only was it not a problem for me necessarily, I thought it was a an attribute to it. It reminded me in a weird way because James Gunn was just talking about Martin Scorsese and said kind of some dumb things recently, but it reminded me of kind of early Scorsese. I actually watched. There's a Martin Scorsese film that I watched for the first time from the '80s called After Hours, which is very good. I've never
Okay.
seen it before. Kind of underrated from his filmography. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but the reason why I mention is that it employed a lot of similar tricks. And from the very first shot of that movie, After Hours, it doesn't start with the static shot. It's just boom. It's just like instantly moving from like the dollying, panning. It's just this constant movement of the camera, and I can see how that that can be annoying and how that can kind of lead to motion sickness for some people. For me personally, it didn't. I thought it gave the film a lot of life. I thought it gave it a lot of energy throughout. There was never a dull moment, and I didn't feel that it was incessant because there were scenes that stick out in my mind where it did kind of hunker down.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Ratcatcher and Bloodsport were in the bus and they were kind of having a heart to heart. So scenes like that. So I think that it didn't bother me because I think that when it needed to, I think that James kind of set it down and let the scenes breathe and not overuse it. And when he did use it, it felt like a good energy rush added to it to me. But
Okay.
I can see why you didn't like it or for why it bothered a lot of people in that regard.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree that it added energy.
Mhm.
I totally see what he was going for, and I think it was a good call. It's just for me, it was a little bit much. But you're
Yeah.
right. Like there were certain scenes where, particularly that scene between Ratcatcher and Bloodsport, where he just locked it down
Hmm.
because you didn't need that in that scene. That you needed that scene to be quiet. And I loved how
Yeah.
when Ratcatcher is describing the story of her father, we see it like in a reflection in the window of
Hmm.
the bus, but as a
Hmm.
flashback in her own mind. Like I thought that was a really, really visually great way to visualize that.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
No, absolutely. I was thinking that was one of the first things I said after the movie is just how many interesting visuals there were, and I don't even mean it just necessarily in how it was composed or the lighting. Just saying the things out loud, it just sounds strange, but in a good way. Like you mentioned, just seeing kind of the flashback of kind of her father projected kind of through the window of the bus, so you still are in the bus and you still see her as she's telling the story, while you're seeing the flashback. I thought that was interesting. Just certain things like, there's a massive king shark. There's a massive humanoid shark creature that walks into this lit up aquarium, and there's a bunch of little multicolored jellyfish that are kind of forming and taking the shape and mimicking him. And like, what a weird image. Or one of my
Yeah.
favorites was at the end where, I'm jumping all over the place now, but
Sorry.
Harley Quinn jumps into the eye of Starro, and she's swimming around in his eye goop, and it's Harley Quinn, so she's like pale white in this ratted, no pun intended, kind of red gown, like this crazy vibrant red gown. And then there's just a bunch of rats swimming around her, and I'm like, what a weird image, but in a really good way. Like, it's a lot of interesting imagery in this.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically we get to the climax. We should move along because we still have a couple more stories to get to, but basically the climax is Starro gets out. There's military everywhere. They have to fight Starro. Oh, I'm leaving out something very serious. There is a sequence between John Cena's Peacemaker and Rick Flag's Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag, where basically we find out that John Cena knows that the American government want to weaponize Starro or whatever, so he's like trying to sabotage the mission, whatever. So they come to blows, and he actually kills Rick Flag, and then ends up seemingly dying himself. We do get a post-credit scene that confirms that he is alive, which of course they have announced that there will be a Peacemaker series, which I'm told they've already shot. So, and I really dug him in the movie, so I'm looking forward to that. But meanwhile, the rest of the squad have to fight Starro, and all the military people are there with the little stars on their face. So it's kind of like a cross between zombies and like the Borg. Like they're all sort of controlled by the central sentience of Starro himself or herself or itself. I don't know.
And that conceit, that setup led to some really great laughs for me. There was just one that was might even be the silliest in the movie. I don't know, but there's a point where Starro itself just kind of lets out this scream like, ah! But then James Gunn has a bunch of quick cuts that are like these zoom ins on, the people on the ground that have starfish on their faces, and they're just like awkwardly yelling too, like, ah! I don't know. And that just killed me. Like, I laughed hard out loud, and just stuff like that. Like throughout the rest of the end sequence, there's like little bits of just weird, goofy humor mixed in with pretty violent, pretty violent graphic scenes and cool action and everything.
Yeah, totally. And then I guess, so yeah, they're fighting Starro. The Polka Dot Man he's seeing Starro as his mother, this giant version of his mother, which was great. He's very helpful in the fight. He dies. Also Milton dies, but whatever.
Poor Milton. I like that. That was another one where they're all kind of walking and you see the silhouettes in the rain as they're gearing up for the third act. And there's just Milton. And I was like, what's he doing there? And aptly he gets shot because he was not made out for that life. Poor Milton.
And then of course the long running gag that people didn't know who Milton was. And then Harley's like, who's Milton? And then at the end, she's calling Bloodsport Milton. He's like, no, I'm not Milton. Milton died. That was all really funny. She ends up going into Starro's eye while Ratcatcher 2 is just bringing millions of rats into the city.
In what's, I think, my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah,
because you were about I know this was you mentioning it about the score, because what I loved about this scene was the score, where it really was like this. She hasn't done that much, Ratcatcher. Like, she's kind of helped out a bit, but she really had like this starring moment, and her and Harley Quinn were the two women, and they brought it down. They brought down Starro. And so there's just something, again, with the weird visuals of her holding that kind of Doctor Who, a sonic screwdriver thing where it has a big light at the end and it controls the rats. So she's holding that up, and like you said, just hundreds of thousands of rats are just swarming the cities, and they're running over everybody, and they're running over Idris Elba, and they're taking down this giant starfish, and it's just weird to say these words out loud, and because it's like, who thinks of this? I don't know.
Mhm. Well, and you mentioned it. The score for this movie was done by John Murphy, who I'm
Mhm.
not familiar with too much of his work, but he did the score for the Danny Boyle movie Sunshine, which is a
Mhm.
movie I like very much. And I love the score. I love the score in that film, as I mentioned in the spoiler-free review. Go on
Mhm.
YouTube, type in John Murphy, Adagio in D minor. It is just this thing that starts off. It's a lot like Hans Zimmer's Time from the end of Inception, and that
Mhm.
it's like four chords. It's an adagio, so it's four chords on a repeat that just builds and builds and builds to this crazy crescendo. It like chills every time. And the piece of music that was playing in this big climax had that feel to it. It's
Yeah.
hard for me to describe, but
Mhm.
I was like, okay, that's some John Murphy shit right there. I'm loving it.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was great. Yeah. So it's yeah. I now I think to kind of get to like this, I have a nitpick. I don't know if this is something that you felt, but a nitpick that I had about the movie, and I say it's a nitpick because it's kind of based on expectations going in, and I don't know if it's actually an issue with the movie or just kind of what I felt was being advertised or promised. But going into this, James Gunn and talked up a lot about like you're not gonna expect anything. Everyone's expendable. Everyone is expendable. This, and that, and anyone could die at any moment. You really don't know what's gonna happen. And I didn't really find that to be true because it starts off with the first 5 minutes of pretty much all of the A team being killed off. But then no one else really dies until like the third act.
Right.
And so it just kind of felt like I didn't get that feeling of like anybody is expendable at any time because no one else was really in danger throughout a lot of it. I figured they weren't going to kill Harley Quinn. I
Oh, there,
thought,
there was a moment where they kind of try to fake us out that
yeah,
she was dead, and I was just like,
mhm,
I just don't buy it. I don't think there is
yeah,
any way Warner Brothers would let that happen.
yeah.
And they gave him like pretty much carte blanche to do whatever he wanted. I
Mhm.
guarantee you, they were like, you cannot kill Harley.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree, and I think that if he spaced out a couple more deaths throughout the movie, I think it could have maybe kept me more on my toes.
Okay.
Uh, but I was a little surprised, that what's it called? That Joel Kinnaman died. I wasn't like shocked, but I was like, okay, because he was one of the few returning people from
Yeah.
from the first movie. Um, Polka Dot Man. I was sad when Pokemon, when
Pokemon Man.
when Polka Dot Man died because I was really hoping he would have this arc because like you said, he kept seeing his mother everywhere because his mother abused him and he has this massive hatred for her, and I was really hoping he would have this arc of finally being able to see at least the Suicide Squad for who they really were and not just see his mother
Right.
whenever he looked at them. But no, he gets squashed, and I wasn't mad about it. That's the kind of thing that like again that the premise kind of promises is that it's like these are all expendable. Don't get attached to anybody. But do you kind of feel that as well? I just stuttered. Do you feel that as well? That it's like, yeah, for all the talk, a lot of the characters felt safe for a lot of it.
I didn't think about it when I was watching it, but now that you mention it, yeah, I mean, it's kind of bunch of people die right at the very beginning, and then they kill off a
Mhm.
couple at the end, and that was kind
Yeah.
of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, so yeah, we were talking about Amanda Waller having this like really awesome moment.
Hmm.
I think that's when she's telling the squad to stand down, don't go fight Starro, and they're like, no, fuck it, we're gonna go fight Starro. Was that the moment? Was
What do
that
you
what
mean?
they were doing when she was like basically threatening to blow them up?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Because they Starro came out and she was like, "Yeah, we don't really need to. It's not our problem. It's not America's. Who cares?" And they're like, that's when they have kind of the redemptive moment of like, you know what, this is the right thing to do. So they were charging into action, regardless of Amanda Waller threatening them, and that's when she fucking loses it, which is
Yeah.
great. Um, yeah, and then the guys in the chair or the guys and girls in the chair in the office, they take out Amanda Waller because they're also like, we can't just kind of sit here complicitly while a
Yeah.
giant starfish kills everybody.
Right. And then so basically they do take down Starro. Trying to remember, how does the movie actually end? I'm
That's
kind
pretty
of
much it. I mean, it's so they wrap it up because, like you were saying, Peacemaker essentially they find out that the U.S. was the ones that got Starro, and they're trying to weaponize it and everything like that. So Joel Kinnaman was like, "We got to get this out to the press." He sounds just like that. He's a smoker. Um, and Peacemaker, in his weird kind of code, was like, "I just can't let that happen because it would cause an international incident." Um, and so they have a fight. Peacemaker wins just by a hair, like he's almost gonna die himself, and you could feel this is something that I liked about John Cena's performance, and something I liked about the character is that he wasn't all evil. Like you could feel that he was like he didn't want to kill Rick Flag. And you could see a bit of like remorse in his eyes after it
Absolutely.
happened. It
Absolutely.
was just like it's this guy that's just so he's so propelled by this whatever code of ethics or code of honor he thinks he has. He's like, I have to do it for peace, and I have to do it for America. It's my job. And he almost fucking shoots Ratcatcher because of
Yeah.
that. And there's a nice little callback of Idris Elba shooting a smaller bullet through his larger bullet to kill Peacemaker.
And that one shot of the two guns going off in like hyper slow motion, you see the
Mhm.
like the smoke come out of the like that looked awesome.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that he had said douchebag Captain America, but from what you were just saying about like his code of ethics, kind of a John Walker in a lot of ways,
Yeah. Oh,
like a
for
little bit
sure.
of a U.S. agent.
Yeah. But I think even more so, like, kind of like brainwashed into thinking that what he's doing is for America. Like John
Right.
Walker seemed more of like a real person.
Right.
Peacemaker definitely was like insane. Um, yeah, no, as you were asking for like how does it actually end? Really, they kind of take down Starro. And then Idris Elba has this conversation over the phone with Amanda Waller, essentially saying like, "Hey, I have this tape, I have this information that the
Right.
U.S. was essentially gonna. They did some bullshit, they did some nasty shit, and if anything happens to me or this team, it's
Or my
gonna be
daughter.
yeah, or my daughter, then it's gonna be released." And Amanda Waller's like, "All right, deal." So essentially, he even tells Ratcatcher like, "We can't have it all. Like, we can't like."
Right.
We save the day, we get to live. Yeah, maybe the truth isn't going to come out, but like I don't know. And then they just kind of walk off into the sunset. No
Right.
matter. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
And then of course we get the mid-credit scene that shows us Wheels is still alive, and then the
Hmm.
post-credit scene that because after uh Peacemaker killed Rick Flag, that building like crumbles and he's like presumably killed in the rubble. But then at
Yeah.
the very end of the credits, we find out he's in the hospital. He's still alive. They found him in the rubble,
Mhm.
and we are off to the Peacemaker series, which now I'm totally looking forward to.
I'm interested. To be honest though, it's like he isn't my he isn't my favorite character though. So it's the
No,
same.
if it were up to me, that wouldn't have been my personal choice, but
No.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it too. I like John Cena in the role. Again, I think I said that Ratcatcher was my favorite. I would love an. I think it'd be awesome to have a show about her in Taika Waititi, or her and King Shark doing weird stuff. I can see what they're doing with the Peacemaker show, so I'll definitely tune into it. But yeah, it fun movie throughout. I wish I'd seen it in IMAX, but shit has been kind of, as we'll talk about, COVID's kind of been flaring up and stuff. So since I had the opportunity to see it at home, I was like, I'm just going to do that instead.
Well, and I think that's really kind of the perfect transition to our next topic. Our next
Mm,
two topics are going to be pretty brief, and then we'll be done the show.
mm.
Um, but I guess just quickly, I think it's very obvious. Big recommendation from me.
Oh yeah. Mm,
Okay, so there you have it. That was our review of The Suicide Squad. Thank you,
mm.
James Gunn. Enjoyed your movie very much. So one thing you wanted to talk about was The Suicide Squad's box office. So this is your story. I'm going to let you take it.
Okay, so essentially, the Suicide Squad. This is a report from Deadline. It says post best R-rated opening during pandemic with 26.5 million. However, that's underperforming from expectations, and it's the worst opening in the franchise. And there's a few reasons why. And franchise, but starting with the DCEU with Man of Steel in 2013. So I wanted to talk about this for a couple of reasons, just because it it's interesting on a number of levels. One is that for a movie, made by James Gunn, who a lot of people seem to really like. A lot of people really like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. People like Harley Quinn. Seemingly, this movie had glowing reviews going in. Like they released, they had like there was no like embargo for most of it. They were
Oh,
Warner Brothers.
reviews are coming out like a couple of weeks early.
Yeah, exactly. They knew they had something good on their hands, and they really were wanting everyone to see. Look, great reviews, great word of mouth. Yet the movie still didn't make that much money. And there's a few different reasons why that could potentially be. One is that an R-rated movie is never going to make as much as a PG-13 movie because it already just limits the amount of people that can see it in theaters. But even then, there's comic book R-rated movies that have done really well, like Logan, Deadpool. Both of them made opening weekends of over 100 million.
Yeah.
The It movies made opening weekends of over 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see just like how even a month ago, Black Widow opened to 80 million, which was a pandemic best. I think a lot of people were expecting this to do better. Like, does 26.5 sound pretty low to you, or was that kind of right where you thought it would be?
No, I thought it would do better than that.
Yeah. And so when I think
I think there was more anticipation for this than there was for Black Widow.
It seemed like it too. Yeah. Like just kind of in like going online and seeing kind of the chatter around this, it seemed like people were really into it. So I'm going to bring up a couple things, and I want to know if you think if these really did kind of help contribute to it. One that we are talking in the beginning was essentially that even within the span of a month from the beginning of July with Black Widow, where things seem to be going okay box office wise, to here, there's been shifts in the pandemic. There's a new Delta variant and even other variants that are kind of creeping up in North America and across the world. Some of it that could potentially be resistant to vaccines. So cases have been going up. So there's a belief that a lot of people just kind of are choosing not to go out to the theater. Like hypothetically, even if Black Widow opened up this weekend instead of a month ago, less people would have seen it because the people I think are playing it a bit more safe. So that's one reason. Do you think COVID had a big impact on it, or do you think there's other things that probably had bigger impact?
Oh, I think it's a number of issues probably, but I imagine COVID. Sure, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
like the last couple of movies that I've gone to in the theater. Now, granted, my movie theater, my local theater, even pre-pandemic, was never that busy, particularly like on a matinee. It was usually like, it could be like 30 people in an auditorium.
yeah.
When I went to see, I think it was when I went to see The Green Knight, it was me, one other guy. When I went to see Old, it was me and maybe like 6 other people. Suicide Squad, 5 or 6 other people. So yeah, I definitely think COVID is playing a part for sure.
Okay. So you saw this in theaters?
Yeah.
Oh, right on. Okay. Yeah. So see, and it's
yeah, we don't have HBO Max in Canada.
Oh, you're right. Shit. Okay. Yeah, and so it's surprising to hear that, like, even I guess it's not so surprising because of the box office numbers, but only about 6 people or a small number of people in your screening. I think that, yeah, I think people are kind of there was like a brief window of like, oh, it seems like movie theaters are back. Oh, COVID's being a jerk again, so let's just kind of reel it back in. And that leads into, although it's not available, HBO Max is not available in Canada. It's still available here, and I think that in America, and that if you have people that are maybe on the fence about going to a theater, and you also give them the opportunity to just watch it at home, I think more people are going to watch it at home. And
absolutely, I've done that with Disney Plus for sure.
Yeah, and although it didn't have like necessarily groundbreaking HBO Max numbers as well, it's still a sizable enough, like over 20 something million viewers watched it. That's if you translated that into actual ticket goer, or like, people buying tickets and going to the theater, that's at least another 10 million, maybe more, on the box office. So I think it again just kind of further illustrates that going forward, because I think at the beginning of the year when we first heard about HBO Max doing this, about most of the movies kind of being released simultaneously, and some of Disney Plus doing it as well, I think you and I talked about how, is this kind of the method that all studios are going to go by anyway, even if the pandemic is over? And I really think the answer is no, because it's showing just how much it's kind of eating into profits, both for Disney Plus, for their movies, and for movies in being released from Warner Brothers. Where I think that this is kind of a bit of a failed experiment, where it's like it's not really generating the revenue that we thought it would. It's not generating the traffic of new subscribers to HBO Max. So in a good way, it's encouraging in the sense that I don't think movie theaters are going to be going away anytime soon, because shit like this is like, it's not working. I don't know.
Well, and so here's another thing too. I mean, Disney Plus, when they put one of their bigger movies on Disney Plus, it's Premier Access. You got to pay $30.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is HBO Max doesn't do that. If you have a subscription, you can just watch the movie, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
No additional charge.
So first off, they're losing out on that additional revenue to bolster the box office.
Yeah.
I don't know if you call it box office here, including Disney Plus, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your overall net. The other thing too is, you know, if you're putting it straight on HBO Max,
mm-hmm.
I don't know how many countries HBO Max is available in. I know it's not available in Canada. It might just be the States. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you don't have to worry about piracy so much in the States because people could just go on HBO Max and watch it. Mm-hmm. Whereas here we don't have that option. But everywhere else in the world, you have to worry about piracy because people may not want to go to the theater, but they want to see this movie, or maybe they can't go to the theater because they're not open right now. And you're losing a lot there too.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been reading a lot about how people in many different countries that maybe are back in lockdown, or like you said, they just can't go to a theater, and they don't have HBO Max, but they've watched it in a full, 4K Ultra HD rip. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason to continue this model. And it's a shame, because I think that the movie absolutely deserves more. It deserves more attention, and so much time and effort was put into it that I wished it would have been a bigger success. The last thing, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is the Deadline article seemed to indicate that whoever's writing it, their opinion was that the main reason this didn't succeed, though, was none of those reasons. Was the fact that the original Suicide Squad, even though that was a hit, it made over $300 million in the domestic box office,
and won an Oscar.
And won an Oscar for best makeup. Jesus Christ. And grossed nearly 800 million worldwide. So it was a financial hit, but it was savaged by critics.
Nobody liked it.
Yeah, you go onto even the user scores, not just critic scores on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, nobody seems to like it. And so there's a lot of talk about how this might have been poorly marketed, the new one, the Suicide Squad, because I think that you and I understood, like, oh, it's James Gunn and it's like a soft reboot, but I think just to kind of the average moviegoer, they're not in tune with that. So they're like, what's this? Another Suicide Squad? It's not even called like Suicide Squad 2. Doesn't have Will Smith. What is this? I don't understand. And they don't have they have a bad taste in their mouth from the previous movie. And so they didn't want to check this one out. And I think that's fair. I mean, like I said, the first one was so derided that I can imagine that just general audiences, Suicide Squad is not a name brand that really inspires kind of enthusiasm.
Right.
And I don't blame them. I don't blame them for people who aren't kind of in the know. Do you think that is the biggest reason that it is like this pseudo sequel reboot from a movie 5 years ago that nobody liked? So maybe in a weird way, it was like a property that was simultaneously best suited for James Gunn's ability, but maybe it wasn't the best movie to throw $100 million at, because
I mean it makes perfect sense. And like, given what did you say the opening weekend take was?
This was let me get that. It was like 26.5 million.
I can't see any way this movie makes profit.
Yeah.
Like
I
unless like overseas, like that's domestic, right?
Yeah, that's domestic. So I'd have to double check what the overseas is. I don't think it's released yet.
Okay.
But even then, it's like you got to have both. It's very rare that a movie, uh, is successful overseas, bombs in the domestic box office, and
Right.
still turns a profit, especially something that's this big. So it may not, if it does really well overseas, maybe it won't be as big of an embarrassment. But you're right. I think that this is going to be not just a disappointment, but a bomb, which is
Which sucks because it's like
yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a shame because it's really good. It's definitely worth people going out and seeing it. But I think it was just that triple threat, that triple whammy of like there's COVID, so people don't want to go to the theater. It's available for free at home, so people don't want to go to the theater. People don't realize there wasn't enough of a push marketing wise to explain what the hell this was. So
Right.
just people weren't interested. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on this one. I also, before we go on to the Trey Stone and Matt Parker story, so I don't bring the song for too long, but essentially, one of the reasons why I found this box office so interesting is that there's been kind of talk about potentially other big studio films kind of being pushed or delayed as well. Potentially Eternals or Spider-Man No Way Home. Do you think that this is any indication that it seems like the box office is going on a downward trend again? Maybe we could just, try our luck again early next summer. Do you think that there's a possibility for that?
I was just gonna bring this up. I think again, Disney's making a little bit more money because they have the premiere access thing, but
Yeah.
Black Widow didn't make anywhere close to what they were hoping.
Yeah.
Suicide Squad, not even close. Like, I understand why the studios tried this experiment because they had to. It was sink or swim. We got to figure something out.
For sure.
We can't just push 3 Marvel movies indefinitely. We have to try something. I mean, it's not working.
Yeah.
I would imagine, it's going to depend on how things go with the pandemic, but I would not be shocked if we hear sometime very soon that Eternals gets pushed or that Spider-Man gets pushed. Like, even like Venom,
or Dune.
Yeah.
There's some big movies that are coming out in October. There's No Time to Die, the latest James Bond movie, which seemingly will never get released. Right. There's Dune, there's Venom. And that's all before Eternals. And I don't know about you, but I really think that the catalyst will be Shang-Chi, because Shang-Chi's coming out in just a few weeks. It's coming out early September. And that's not being released by Premiere Access as well. It's only in theaters.
Okay.
So I really think that if that doesn't do well, I think all the other studios are going to jump ship. Now, I don't have any information. That's just my speculation. So I'm not saying this as an absolute fact, but I really think that, there are studios right now looking at the Suicide Squad box office, and a lot of them are thinking, okay, well, it's rated R and it's also released on HBO Max. So maybe that just cannibalized it. The box office can still be strong. But if Shang-Chi comes out, a Marvel movie that's not being released simultaneoely on Premiere Access, and that doesn't do well, every other studio, I think it's just an indicator that people aren't going to the theaters anymore, or not anymore, but they're quieting down again because of COVID. And
also, of course, theaters have reduced capacity, so that's a factor too. But no, the other thing too is for Shang-Chi to be the one that's scrutinized before making these decisions. It's almost kind of unfair because most people don't know who Shang-Chi is. I don't. I mean, I do now because I've been looking into it because I follow the Marvel movies, but it's not like Black Widow. People know who Black Widow is.
Yeah.
She's been in like 10 movies.
Yeah.
So
no, you're right. It sucks. It's a shitty situation because I think even not in a pandemic setting, Shang-Chi probably would have had a lower tier opening for a Marvel movie. I think it would have done well. I mean, Marvel's shown that even with even with new characters that they introduce, they have such strong brand recognition that people will go out to it. But it wouldn't have made over $100 million. It would have made probably far south of $100 million, even not in a pandemic setting. So now that we are, it's like, fuck, how low is this box office going to be?
Right. Well, we're gonna have to wait and see, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see how all this goes. That's
Mhm.
it's heavy, but you know,
Yeah.
I guess at the end of the day, it's just movies, but it's business, right?
Yeah,
So
we'll see. We'll see them at some point. All
yeah,
these movies, whether they get delayed, at some point we'll see them.
yeah.
So that's the silver lining.
Okay. So finally, we're just gonna sort of talk about this fairly quickly.
Mhm.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who are the guys behind South Park, and of course movies like Orgasmo, Team America: World Police, South Park: Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. They're also two of the three guys behind the Book of Mormon stage musical, which is brilliant. They were also in Basketball. It wasn't their movie, but they were in it, and I love that movie. I don't care. Um, so they've done, what did I say was 23 seasons of South Park now?
Yeah, it was like 23, 24.
It's 23 and like a half, because
Mhm.
like the 24th season had like a couple of specials, but I guess at least IMDb is counting it as a season for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Well, they just signed a new deal with Paramount Plus for, I believe the article that I got from, let me see, I have it here. Hang on. I got it from Variety. Uh, so, okay, yeah. So they're basically, Paramount Plus has given an order to Trey Parker and Matt Stone for 6 more seasons of their show, which will take them into their 30th season, which is
Mhm.
insane.
Mhm.
And also 14 South Park movies. Now, the TV show will still air on Comedy Central for time being, and then it will make its way to Paramount Plus. The 14 movies, South Park movies, specifically South Park movies, will be going straight to streaming on Paramount Plus.
Mhm.
This deal, let me bring it up again here. This deal is over the course of, I believe, 6 years. And according to Bloomberg, this deal is, check this out, $900 million for 6 seasons of TV and 14 movies. $900 million. Now, this, we've talked about Netflix throwing their money around, putting
Mhm.
their money where their mouth is. This is a flex. And Paramount Plus, apparently its popularity is really starting to grow. So
Sorry, I have
I thought you were
thoughts.
going to say something.
No, I have thoughts, but I was letting you finish.
Okay. Basically, yeah. So 6 seasons of TV and 14 movies over the course of 6 years for $900 million. Chris, you have thoughts. Tell them to me.
My first thought is why is in let me preface that by saying that I think everybody, not everybody, but I think a lot of people have been into South Park at some point. The show's been on since the 90s. I think 97.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 97. That's over 20 years, and like you said, 23, 24 seasons. It's been around for a bit. But if I'm honest, it always just kind of felt like I was surprised. I'm always surprised to hear it's like, oh, new South Park season. I'm like, oh, they're still doing those. Like, it's similar to The Simpsons in the sense that The Simpsons is just keeps going. But like, who still watches this? Like, I don't really know anybody that watches it. South Park used to be a really huge thing. Like, if this deal happened maybe 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been like, oh, okay, I see it. But now I really just can't help but think like who really still watches South Park? Like I didn't check to see the ratings, how much viewership it gets on Comedy Central recently. I remember checking it sometime in the past couple years and it's down. Like it's
Yeah.
not embarrassing or anything, but like I don't know. South Park doesn't seem to be at its peak of popularity. It doesn't seem to be really a part of pop culture much anymore. Like nobody really talks about it that much. Seemingly, I don't see a lot of love for it. I'm sure it has these diehard fans in it, and it has enough of a viewership that Comedy Central is like, well, it's cheap to make, so let's just do this, and it's a staple, and yada yada. But is this a property that's worth $900 million? I don't know.
I don't know either. And
I don't think it is.
I'm kind of with you in that, like, a while back, South Park was some of the funniest and smartest
It was.
stuff on television.
Mhm.
I've found that, like, particularly over the last maybe 5 years or so, they're kind of they're trying to make their point. And I've said this many times. I said this about Ghostbusters 2016. I'm all for a movie or a TV show that has a point to make or a message, but you got to make something good first and
Mhm.
infuse it with that message second. And
Mhm.
it feels like South Park is more over the last few years anyway, excuse me, is more focused on getting their point across, whatever that point may be, than being funny.
Yeah.
And I'm also finding the last few seasons, particularly, have this like overarching plot, which was never like that before. It was very
Mhm.
episodic. Now it's becoming sort of serialized. And I don't like that for South Park. But it's not making me laugh. I used to watch South Park religiously up until very recently. I think maybe the last full season they did, like, I was still watching it, but I'd like forget that there was a new episode and I'd be like, oh,
Mhm.
I'll get to it. And then I just kind of wouldn't get to it.
Yeah.
I think this is amazing for Trey Parker and Matt
Yeah,
Stone.
good for them. I'm not shitting on them. I mean, get that money, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's if I don't know. I wouldn't make that if I was the one with writing the checks. I wouldn't make that deal because I I stopped watching several years back. But yeah, I was well into it, so I'm not hating on the show. I think I agree that it was, you know, under this kind of facade of a potty humor in juvenile kind of like bad taste kind of humor was some really extremely clever
Yeah.
and insightful satire.
Yeah.
It's a very smart show, but you're right that even though I stopped watching regularly years ago, I would tune in every once in a while. Never when they were premiering, just always kind of would watch reruns of later modern episodes. And you're right that it kind of lost its way in the sense that other South Park episodes would kind of put like a funny premise first and funny scenarios and funny jokes, and then there'd be elements of like a message or a theme that's throughout. And some were more heavy on the themes than others, but it was always about the humor and it was always about telling an individual story. The story and the jokes worked without the themes.
Well, and that's another thing too, because some of the best episodes,
Mhm.
sometimes you have an A plot and a B plot,
Yeah,
but you don't even recognize what the theme is or what the point is they're trying to make until like the third act. It all comes
yeah,
together and you go like, oh, I get it.
yeah, yeah.
It's
And
not really like that anymore.
no, 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 you're completely right. Now it seems like they do the opposite of like we have something we want to say first,
Yeah.
and then they try to shoehorn some jokes that don't really work. One, they're not that funny, but two, they just feel out of place. It seems like you said, it seems backwards, and that they're focused so much on the messaging that they forget to tell an interesting story or tell good jokes.
Right.
But also, going back to the deal, what surprised me because I guess I misread it and I was trying to find it because I heard about like the multiple seasons and such, and then I read that it was like 14 original movies, and I just assumed that meant like just 14 original movies from Matt Stone and Trey Parker. I didn't know that meant 14 fucking South Park movies. What are you gonna do? Why do we need 14 South Park movies?
I mean, let me double check that and make sure I'm not misleading our audience, but uh maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, because
Maybe
I was trying to read it and I couldn't tell. The wording on it was kind of strange.
yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look into that deeper, but
Okay, so
I would much I'd be much happier about this whole concept if it was 14 just animated movies where they can do whatever they want. I'd be so much more interested in that
mhm,
because they've shown when they go away from South Park with Team America, with Book of Mormon, which is a completely different medium, with that sitcom they did, That's My Bush, which was brilliant.
mhm.
Um, they've shown that when they do other stuff, when they step away from South Park, it turns to gold. So I feel like maybe South Park is just a little bit tired, like the same issue with The Simpsons. They've done every premise, even in the 6 Days to Air documentary. There's a part where Trey Parker's doing a sort of talking heads interview, and he said, for the longest time while making this show, it was like, we have an idea and we're like, oh, we can't do that. The Simpsons did it.
Yeah.
But then seasons later, they're like, oh, we can't do that. We already did that. That was us.
Yeah.
We did that, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I feel like it's getting a little tired. So hopefully I was wrong. Or at least ideally in my head, I was wrong. And it's just 14 movies that don't necessarily have to be South Park.
Yeah, I would prefer that, but because I was rereading and I tried to look up another article. Again, the wording of it is kind of strange. The meaning is a bit nebulous. It says 14 original movies, but then literally the next sentence is like, and then 2 of the original South Park movies will be premiering once a year. And it's
Right.
like, okay, so if it's just 14 original movies from Matt Stone and Trey Parker, that's pretty cool. I'm excited to see what new shit they come up with.
Yeah.
If it's 14 South Park movies, I can guarantee you I'm not going to watch all of them. There's no way. There's no way that all 14 of them are gold and they've maintained the level. I don't know. Again, good for Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
Yeah.
I wish at some point in my life I could ink a deal for $900 million and then just laugh myself off to a private island. And
I'd be happy with 899 million.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah. Let's not be greedy.
I'll have to slum it a little bit.
Yeah.
Eat ramen on the weekends, but
yeah.
you know.
You can only go to space in your private space jet twice a year.
Right.
It's ridiculous. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, good for them. Awesome. I do hope that it'll be 14.
Mhm.
You know, because even if they're all animated, like their team is so good at working quickly, at you know, when they want to do something really high concept or whatever, at getting the animation right or whatever it is. Like when they did the parody of like heavy metal, that was fantastic. You know?
For sure.
So that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much the show here for today. Of course, we want to, as always, we want to encourage you guys to jump down to the comments. Let us know what you thought of the Suicide Squad, why you think maybe the box office wasn't so good. Are you looking forward to 14 potentially South Park movies? Or what do you think of this deal? Of course, we would love it if you drop a like on the video or share it around just to help the channel grow. We appreciate that very much. Chris, where can people follow you online?
On my Instagram handle called Art of Light and Shadow. It's a fun kind of blog about film. Basically a daily blog of all the movies I'm watching, but also get to talk about my favorites over across the years. I do some fun trivia and fun kind of tournament events with the followers. So it's a good time. Art of Light and Shadow.
And if you want to check out Andris, who wasn't here today, but if you want to check him out anyway, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Go on YouTube, do a search for Cheap Thrills, Unspeakable Terror. He reviews sort of horror and sci-fi, low budget cinema from the dawn of cinema to the modern era. I really like his channel. Go on, check it out. Of course, you're already on my channel, Courtshake. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love you forever for it. And of course, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Courtshake as well. Once again, we want to remind you guys that you can get audio versions of this podcast at places like Google Podcasts and Spotify. We will be back next week. I don't know what we're going to be talking about yet. I say that every week, so I guess I'm just bad at planning ahead, but we will be back. And in the meantime, we just want to say very much that we hope you guys are all safe and healthy as we keep trying to come together and get through this thing together. So thank you guys for watching. We will see you next week. And until then, take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye now.
Mass Media.